Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm going to be talking all about today lesson observations. Now I know this is going to be something that people get worried about, concerned about as they approach throughout your PGCE year, and I'm here to tell you, don't panic, don't worry. Lesson observations are there for you to gain feedback, but also for you to gain further knowledge and awareness from an outsider's perspective. Lesson observations are something that naturally we're going to feel nervous about, and we perhaps might feel sometimes we might doubt ourselves and question our own teaching practice. However, it's a learning experience. But I'm going to tell you a few things that you might want to consider in regards to lesson observations that might help to ease your worries or be aware of the expectations of what probably is likely to happen in a lesson observation. So the first thing that I'm going to say is, of course, have a plan. This is a very obvious and a given one. Having a lesson plan is important so that you know what you're going to be teaching, but you also have a rough guideline towards the structure of the lesson. Now, it's very likely that the teacher observing you or your mentor will talk to you about this, and they might ask you about the lesson plan. They might ask to have a look physically at a lesson plan, and this very much depends upon where you have been placed, but also about essentially what the teacher or the person observing you wants from you. So obviously having a plan will help to ease your worries in regards to the structure of the lesson. However, having a plan is great, but a lot of the things that we'll be talking about kind of go away from being too rigid towards the plan. Number 2, be prepared to adapt. Now, having a lesson plan is great. Having a structure and a skeleton for the lesson will really allow you to have an awareness towards where you want pupils to be going within that lesson. However, I have been there several times, and this is something that when you gain more confidence, you will feel more confident with adapting on the spot. I have been there several times, and I still today, every teacher is like this, that you can plan a beautifully planned 60-minute lesson and sometimes things don't work out. Now, I'm not saying that things don't work out in regards to tasks might not work. What I'm saying is that timing, you might have planned, for example, 20 minutes for a particular task, and actually it's taking pupils a lot longer or a lot less time to complete that. It might be, for example, that certain aspects of the tasks aren't working effectively. It might be that you need to scaffold this slightly. It might be you need to rechange groups. There's a lot of things and a lot of different variables that can happen in the classroom that we won't have control over until we're in the classroom. So don't think that your plan is there and you have to follow it step by step. One of the teaching standards is adapting to the needs of pupils, and this is important within your lesson live as well. Number 3, kind of links towards number 2, but time management. Now, like I've said, you can allocate and plan how long certain tasks might take. However, have an awareness towards your time management. Now, I always wear a watch whenever I'm teaching, and I'm always mindful about the lesson is an hour long. Where do I want them to be at the end of the lesson? This does not mean that I'm going to race through the content so that I can get to the finish point within 60 minutes. However, it's using that time wisely. In my opinion, does it matter if they don't complete every single task in that lesson? No. What matters is what progress the pupils have made within that classroom. And have you given the pupils that opportunity to be supported and challenged within the time that they have had in the classroom? Number 4, don't worry too much about the person who is observing you in the room. Sometimes we can feel that need to continuously look at the fellow teacher who is observing you, perhaps to get that confirmation and that physical check of, is this okay? And actually, they are there simply to review your teaching practices, but also to provide insightful feedback. Being in control of your classes and being confident is actually shown not by the person who is observing you, but by you. If we constantly feel the need to be looking at that fellow teacher for reassurance, we're not always necessarily establishing that teacher presence within the classroom that we might want. Now, I'm not saying at all there might be certain circumstances that you need a second opinion. I'm not saying, in your PGCE that you can't do this. Absolutely have those conversations. However, as you gain more confidence, remember, once you pass your PGCE year, once you get your teaching qualification, you will be on your own in the classroom, unless you have a TA, but still, you will be on your own in the classroom and you will be responsible. Gain that confidence and that trust within yourself that you can do it on your own, and don't rely on the other teacher giving you that physical or verbal confirmation that everything is going okay. 5. Lesson observations are there to provide you with a chance to gain feedback, but also for you to review your current practice. Now, whenever I have been observed, and side note here, observations don't just stop in your PGCE year. You are continuously observed throughout your teaching career, but it kind of becomes less and less and less. But it depends upon the school that you are at. If I think about the amount of times that I, on average, get observed now, I get observed at least twice a year formally by my line manager, but also other informal observations might take place in regards to members of the senior leadership team, might want to come on learning walks, behaviour walks, etc., those kind of concepts. So it's not something that, you're going to completely forget about and not experience again lesson observations. It's there for feedback. Doesn't matter how many years of teaching practice you've got, feedback is always useful. I actually find the most useful feedback that I've always received is thinking about alternative ways that perhaps you could have completed or tackled certain parts of the lesson. Does that mean that the lesson that you have delivered was bad? Absolutely not. It actually gives you an opportunity when you're being observed for somebody else to think about what their viewpoint might be, how they might tackle situations differently. It's also actually a really nice feeling when you get observed, and it might be that your mentor or your the fellow teacher who's observing you actually really compliments on the approach that you've had with a certain task, as we're all different types of teachers. And I've had quite a few times in the observations that I've had, teachers actually say, I've never considered that strategy before, I'm going to take that away. So see it as actually an opportunity for you to showcase your teaching strategies within the classroom. Don't always be worried about the feedback and that it's automatically going to be negative, because I'm going to tell you, most of the time it's not going to be entirely negative. To be honest, I can't think about any observation that I've ever had in my PGCE that was completely negative. And when I mean negative, when we're talking about negative, this is critical. This is, critical feedback. It's providing you with something to work from. It's not negative, it's providing you with an opportunity to grow. Don't be too hard on yourself. In lesson observations, I remember in my PGCE year, there was one, and I remember just getting home and getting myself really upset about it, actually. And thinking how frustrated I was with the scenario and what had happened. Not even the feedback, just with the kind of day that had happened, and that my lesson didn't go as well as I wanted to. And we've all been there when we've spent hours on a lesson and it didn't work out the way that we wanted to. But let's be realistic. No teacher 100% of the time gets it right. I always say to my pupils, and I personally believe it's harder to be consistently good than it is to be outstanding a few times. Consistently being good, that means that, there are going to be moments where perhaps things might go wrong, and you're a human, that's okay. So don't worry too much about your observations, thinking that if I've done something bad, not even bad, if I've done something that wasn't that effective, that means I'm a bad teacher and the lesson didn't go well at all. No, it's a learning experience, and this happens to every single teacher. It doesn't matter if you've got 20 years behind your belt or you've got 1 year underneath your belt. It happens to us all. But lastly, trust your gut. Trust your gut and be aware of the environment and the atmosphere within the classroom. One of the biggest tips that I will always give is don't be afraid to just take even 30 seconds sometimes to just stop and observe the room. This is a powerful tool that I picked up in my PGCE year, and I actually learnt this during one of my lesson observations where I'd planned 1,000,001 different activities, and I took a moment and thought, they're not going to work, I'm going to adapt. And because I was able to read the room and take that moment to reflect and think about the next plan of action, the lesson was more effective as I was adapting to the needs of the pupils there and then. And you're not going to be able to do that, within 2-3 seconds. As you gain more confidence, it will take you less time, but don't feel like you can't take just 30 seconds to just stop and reflect and think about the next move. Because like I said in that first thing, plans are great, but they're not always going to help you. So I hope that's been really useful. Lesson observations, I know, can be scary and daunting at times, but see it as an opportunity for you to grow, for you to receive feedback. But also in your PGCE year, it's about you gaining that experience and you gaining that confidence with actually reassuring yourself that you know your stuff. I hope that you've enjoyed today's video. If you have found this useful, please, give it a like. If you do have any questions, pop them in the comment below. It might be that you are a fellow teacher like me and you've watched this and thought, oh, this is a great tip that I always apply. Pop it below. This is a sharing platform. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm the guru of teaching, because I'm not. I'm simply, a drama teacher who has lots of things to say. I hope you have a fantastic week and I look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.